Someone abandoned their idolatry, abandoned their way of life, converted to Judaism, follows the one and only God of Israel, considered a skin disease? That doesn't sound like a compliment. That doesn't sound like the 36 expressions of love and protection that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us in the Torah about converts, so much so that the Rambam paskins la'alachah that a Jew has to love every other Jew that is obviously considered a lover of Hashem, someone that follows Torah and mitzvot. But if that Jew is a convert, he has to love that Jew even more than the other Jews. In fact, he has to love that Jew as much as he loves God. Now, this is unacceptable to some people that want to make their own rules. But this is what the law is. This is what Torah says. This is what the Rambam paskins la'alachah. So how can you say that someone that's so special is a skin disease? Skin disease doesn't sound good. Skin disease sounds terrible. Anyone that has experienced any type of skin disease doesn't look at skin disease as something favorable. So how could this be? Now, of course, the heretics, especially those missionaries that try to distort the Torah, will always look at things like this in order to capitalize on them and say, look, the Jewish people are bad because of all types of misunderstandings they have of the Talmud. One of the things, for example, that they bring often is they say, look, the whole notion of having a rabbi is completely forbidden. And that's why a Christian will never call any rabbi a rabbi. They'll call him sir, or they'll call them by their first name, but they hate the whole title of rabbi because their false testament tells them, rabbis are bad. But even though the Torah says that we have our sages, we have our chachamim, don't go right or left, say, no, that's only referring to the Levi tribe. If they're a Levi, then they're allowed to be the rabbis, the judges, and so on. Now, this would be nice if it was true, but unfortunately, their stupidity and ignorance is proven otherwise here in this parasha. In this parasha, we have one of the most righteous converts that ever lived, Yitro, who not only hears HaKadosh Baruch Hu's glory and the extraordinary things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for Am Yisrael, as the parasha starts, Vayishma Yitro, that Yitro heard. He heard about the glory of God. He heard about God's reward and punishment against the Egyptians. He heard how God split the ocean for us. He heard all of these extraordinary things. And in chapter 18, verse number 11 and 12, Yitro does two extraordinary things. He says, now I know that Hashem is great and there is no God other than Him, because in the way that the Egyptians had taught to punish Israel, in exactly that way they themselves were punished. And then in 12 he talks about bringing a sacrifice in honor of God, Korban Olah. So Yitro blessed HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Gemara in Masechet Brachot, page 54, says that Yitro became like a skin disease to Am Yisrael. Skin disease? You just blessed God. And if that's not enough, if you go to Masechet Masechet Sanhedrin, page 94a, you'll find something even more extraordinary. Not only did Yitro bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name, but even more so, Yitro on the spot took a knife and gave himself a brit milah, like Avraham Avinu. Yitro took a knife, gave himself a brit milah, circumcision. Why? Yitro heard all he needed to hear. I want to be a Jew. I want to be a Jew. That's it. Not maybe if you guys convince me, if I have enough money, if this, if that. No conditions. I've heard enough. Yitro blesses HaKadosh Baruch Hu, circumcises himself. Yitro converts to Judaism. Yitro converts to Judaism. So why call him a skin disease? Doesn't sound good, does it? Yitro doesn't finish there. Yitro also gives Moshe Rabbeinu some advice that ends up being the creation of the legal system in the world until this day. And for those heretics that come from the Messianic Jews, which are really Christians in disguise, that say that only the Levites can be the rabbis, Yitro also disproved them. Why? Because Yitro said that you have to have the leaders of thousands, the leaders of hundreds, the leaders of 50s, and the leaders of the tens. And that's exactly what HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed to happen, and that's what Moshe Rabbeinu instituted. Now, the Torah tells us that there were 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 60. It's needless to say there was at least that many women, and certainly many more kids than that, and obviously people older than 60. But 600,000 men, if that's what we base our number on, just the men, not the older ones, not the children, not the women, that means that we will have 78,601 judges. Leaders of thousands, 600,000, you need to have 600. Leaders of hundreds, 600,000, you need 6,000. Leaders of 50s, divide the 600,000 to 50, you get 12,000. And the leaders of tens, simply just remove 1 0 from the 600,000, you have 60,000. Total of all of these leaders, of these judges, 78,601. Now, how does this disprove the whole notion that only the Levites can be the judges or the rabbis or the leaders? Simple. The Torah tells us repeatedly how many Levites there were. And there were only 22,000. Which means that if we have 78,601, the Levites are not enough to meet that number. And certainly there was more of the 78,000, but even if you're conservative and you only base it off of the 600,000, you still get a 78,000. This all came from Yitro. Yitro fought idolatry back then. Yitro is still fighting idolatry today.